Welcome to Fans First, a sports podcast where your voice matters most. Hosted by Hall of Fame sportscaster Jim Powell. This is the show that puts fans at the heart of the conversation. Whether you're cheering in the stands, screaming at the TV, or debating with friends about the latest trades, Fans First is here to amplify your thoughts, your insights, and your love for the game.
Welcome to Fans First, a sports podcast. My name is Jim Powell. I am honored once again to be your host today. Tyler Flowers will join us here in a moment, and we have a couple of luminaries for guests today on the program, so don't go anywhere. We also have a big event, and that is our first major sponsor has come on board. It's Georgia Advisory Group. It's a long-time, very successful financial services firm with over 120 years of combined experience. It's run by the founder, Dave Dooley, who is a big sports fan. He has built a team at Georgia Advisory Group, which is riddled with all-stars, with a full-time CPA, investment advisors, money managers, insurance experts, and estate planning professionals. They have their clients covered in every way possible. One of the many things I love about the Georgia Advisory Group is that it is a fiduciary, which means it has a legal and ethical duty to put their clients' interests first. Lots of us get nervous about trusting someone to oversee our hard-earned money, but I have known Dave Dooley and his family for decades, and I can tell you, he is a rock-solid human being and someone I trust implicitly. Once you get to meet him, you'll quickly understand why his firm has been so successful at helping people make the very most of what they have. You don't stay in business this long in a city like Alpharetta, Georgia, unless you are a very respected person, and Dave is certainly that. He and his team sincerely care more about their clients than they do about themselves, and don't just take my word for it. Go check out the Georgia Advisory Group right now. Call them at 770-746-6511. It's located in the heart of downtown Alpharetta, Georgia. Well, we want to welcome everyone to Fans First, a sports podcast. My name is Jim Powell, joined by my co-host, the trusty Tyler Flowers, and a couple of guys you probably have heard of at some point in your life. Couple of Hall of Famers. Chipper Jones, one of the greats of all time, as is our right-handed pitcher that doesn't come out of the bullpen. He starts, and he likes to finish what he starts, and that is John Smoltz. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We are honored to have you here with us today.
Appreciate you having us, Jim.
Yeah, I should have probably gone over to Chipper's house since we're 5 minutes apart, but I'm stuck here at a golf course, so thanks for having us.
Oh, God forbid.
Well, it's such a beautiful day. I wouldn't have blamed anybody for bailing on it, but I'm glad you guys are here. I want to talk about some of the baseball issues. I know Chipper's got some deadline. He's got to pick up his kids from school before too long, so I want to get glean some of his knowledge. This torpedo bat thing that's kind of taken on a life of its own. I mean, I've read about it. I understand they tried to shift the mass to a, better spot in the bat or whatever it is. And the hitters seem to be loving it. And the home run totals are saying that it's working very well. So Chipper, I'll start with you since you're the big bopper. What do you know about torpedo bats? Have you tried to swing one? What are your thoughts on this new phenomenon?
I don't know. I've never picked one up. I asked some questions about it when I was down in spring training the last week of spring because I heard some buzz. But the bottom line is, Jim, if Major League Baseball doesn't have a problem with it, then I don't see what the big deal is. I mean, I've been keeping track of some of the guys that are using the torpedo bats. And they got a few homers, but a guy like Jazz Chisholm, he's still hitting 161. I mean, I don't know that it's all that big of an advantage. You can distribute weight maybe in some different areas of the bat. And I heard somebody say that the Yankees did this big report on when they're not making hard contact, are they getting jammed or are they hitting the ball off the end of the bat? Me personally, I was a big weight in the end of the bat kind of hitter because I did not get jammed a ton, but I pulled off, and hit balls off the end quite a bit. So I would have a little more weight distributed down towards the end. Anyway, their study found that the Yankees were getting jammed a lot more than they were hitting the ball off the end of the bat. So apparently this this bat helps alleviate that problem. Although, 161 is not, all that much to write home about. So I think the jury is out. But the fact of the matter is, if MLB doesn't have a problem with it and has okayed this bat, then let it be.
I think that could have been something good for me. Unlike Chipper, I was not afraid to get jammed. I would get the heaviest bat, most dense wood I could, just knowing I got to get jammed. So then, okay, if I get jammed, hopefully it stays in one piece. I can get this bloop over the infield at least.
There you go.
I got a question for you, Chipper. I don't know your numbers against like Mariano, but maybe if you get jammed up a lot against him, maybe that could be a consideration. Maybe like matchup to matchup.
I did get jammed against him quite a bit. I think I had like one hit and 5 or 6 at bats, and he broke me off a couple times. But I don't care if you're swinging something that's got 2 pounds right above your thumbs. You're not going to get any hits off. I mean, he's throwing 95-mile-an-hour chainsaws up there, so it's he's pretty much going to saw through whatever you got until you learn, like, technique-wise, how to hit a cutter correctly. He's going to live in your kitchen regardless of who it is.
Smoltzy, what are your thoughts from the pitching standpoint on the Torpedo bats?
Well, the biggest thing is for the Yankees, it really was the perfect storm. It was record heat in April. You don't see that. Ball was flying. And 2 games later, they got shut out. So if you miss the barrel of the bat as a pitcher, it doesn't matter what they have up there. I mean, Jose Cruz could hit with a fungo, and there's no barrel there. And the style of hitting today is still susceptible to swing and miss. So I just don't think the Torpedo bat, because it got so much, they scored 20 runs and then they scored 13, and it was Milwaukee just not having a really good series. So shortly after that, I think Gallen shut them out. I mean, the fact of the matter is that hitting is all about hitting mistakes. And that's why the one plane swing, the launch angle swing, that's why there's so many strikeouts, and that's why there's so many home runs. So if you get the barrel of the bat, no matter where it is, and you get a mistake, you're going to crush it. I came up with a stat a long time ago, and I think they're finally using it. Exit velocity is the most overrated statistic there is in baseball. And the reason it's overrated is you could strike out 220 times and have 10 of the top 20 exit velocities. What does that mean? So give me an average exit velocity with a strikeout being 0, and I guarantee you'll see the best hitters in baseball with not a sexy exit velocity, but with a consistency. And that's really what the game has been missing. We're missing more Arise, Luis Arises, and we're missing those. So again, you could have a Fred Flintstone bat, and if your pitcher makes a mistake, he's going to hit it to the moon.
I love that exit velocity, Smoltzy, because I used to see my name towards the top. But to your point, I also added 120 strikeouts with it. When I did hit it, it came off hard, but I didn't hit it all the time. I think that's a great point.
Well, baseball continues to evolve. It seems like I think the game is great. It's been great for a long time. I can understand an occasional tweak, but it seems like up in New York, they like to spend their off season trying to figure out ways to come up with new gadgets or new wrinkles or things. What do you guys think about the tweaks that seem like they're being constantly made out of New York?
Yeah, it's a little frustrating. I think every once in a while they hit the nail on the head. I don't have a problem with the pitch clock. It actually encourages the guy to get up there on the mound and get into a rhythm. Not only him getting into the rhythm, but the game itself getting into a rhythm. So I feel like it's had its pluses up to this point, and then they come up with a ghost runner or an extra innings or the 3-batter rule, the 2 pickoff rule at first, or you can't slide into the second baseman on a double play. You can't hit the catch. I mean, my goodness, it's just like the tinkering never ends. And I'm really kind of, frustrated with, it seems like there's something every year. And, the more and more that we boo-hoo some of these little, knick-knacky changes. It's kind of like whatever comes out of their mouth next, it goes in one ear and out the other. We just don't even listen to it.
I mean, John, it feels like to me if you're going to constantly be tweaking and manipulating the game, it's almost like you don't really like the game that much. So you're trying to make it more like they want it in New York, rather than the great old game that we've all enjoyed for decades and decades, most of our lives. We love the sport. So it feels like maybe somebody up in New York just isn't that fond of the game as it stands right now.
Well, I got a little different take. The train has come off the track with analytics. The game has gotten to a point where it's out of control, and they're trying to figure out ways to get the train back on the track, because the game is nowhere played close to the game that was, for the last 30 years. The game got really slow. It got boring. There's no punishment for strikeouts. There's no punishment for 4-inning pitchers. The game is analytically driven. It's stratomatic baseball, and they can't do anything to make clubs change their reward system. So what they're trying to do is find rule changes that will actually self-correct the game back into action. I know they seem ridiculous, some of them, but the reality is, think about where we were 3 years ago. 4-hour games, 20 strikeouts between two teams, 12 to 13 pitchers between two teams, no stolen bases. Everything was analytic driven. There's no two buckets. The eyes don't matter anymore. And so what baseball's trying to do, and I will give them credit for this, they're going to have to make another rule change coming up. If they want to see hitting go to an all-time worse, then bring in the automatic strike zone. That will cripple hitting. Hitting is so far behind pitching velocity, and the injuries are so far behind the lifelong dream of pitching for 15 years. Analytics has said, we don't care. We'll just use 38 pitchers in a year. I'm telling you, the next rule change that needs to happen is a limit on how many pitchers you can have on your staff. Because again, every sport has gone through a shift. When they don't like, the commissioner doesn't like the direction, they'll say the NBA's going, they change the defensive rules. Let's say hockey was not scoring any goals. They eliminated the blue line. Football, as much as we don't like it, you can't crush the quarterback, because if you lose the quarterback, you lose the football. Yeah, and the attraction of coming to the baseball park has no longer been around the starting pitcher. There's nobody looking on their iPad or phone and saying, who's pitching tomorrow? Got to go see them. So the game is trying to help turn the analytical philosophies around, because they've exposed and taken advantage of rules that have really made the game suffer for it. In my opinion, the athletes are greater than ever. There's no doubt that the arms are bigger than they ever are, but there's more injuries. So I'm telling you that the next rule change is going to have to come around pitching, and some form of drastic change to change the narrative, because there's too many guys pitching in a game.
Chipper, what's your reaction to that?
Well, I believe that I agree with most of the points that John says right there. I think the reason that it's become analytically driven is you don't have people sitting in the GM's box anymore that are those deep-rooted, lifelong baseball fans. Guys like John Sherholz, he's a dinosaur now. Some of the great GMs of the past, they're gone. They've been rooted out by the guys who think that you can get away with the money ball type of approach year in and year out. And, sometimes you'll catch lightning in a bottle and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is we've gotten away from what makes baseball great. We've gotten away from the fundamentals. We've gotten away from, pitchers trying to finish what they start, hitters playing the game of baseball situationally in the box. There's no bunting. There's no hitting behind the runner with a guy on second and nobody out. There's no hit and runs. It's basically go up there and maybe hope you string 3 or 4 hits together, with a big bop in there somewhere. But it's not the game that we grew up watching. And I think having those, some of the guys that aren't deeply rooted baseball career lifers in those GM spots is the reason why.
And Jim, I'm not anti-analytics. I'm just anti all one bucket. So when you have, they're doing whatever the rules allow them to do. And I don't blame them. And they're going to keep doing it. And they're going to do it to the point where it's going to get almost absurd. But if you have every game played in a dome, then maybe a lot of this stuff makes sense. And 162, there's a lot of numbers that make sense. But when you get to the postseason and you don't deviate, you're in trouble.
Got to be easier, John, I would think, to pitch to today's hitters, generally speaking, because of the lack of approach or a different approach, or however you want to characterize it, that Chipper was talking about. Don't you find that it would be easier to tie these guys up because of the current approach that is shared by so many different hitters in Major League Baseball?
Oh, 100%. And there's no stress. The stress is you give up solo home runs. Big deal. You're going to strike out 3 or 4 more guys just because if you're on, you're going to miss the barrel of the bat. There is no 2-strike approach or adjustment. The typical leadoff hitter isn't there to create stress on the bases. And look, I mean, that's just, again, I don't blame the players. The players are chasing the reward system. We chased our reward system. Everybody is going to play the game in a way that gets rewarded. And if you don't, Chipper today, if he was playing today, in my opinion, if they would say, we need you to hit 40, if you hit 250, so what? If you strike out 180, so what? There's no badge of honor for hitting 300. And that, to me, that's when you start thinking, if you're Major League Baseball, you're like, if the Major League batting average keeps going down, what are you going to do? And how are you going? I mean, you can't move the mound back. So you've got to find ways to change rules that change philosophy. Don't just look at it like they don't like the game. It's just, if the game keeps going the way it's going, we're going to have 160 innings starting pitchers. We're going to have Tommy John second and third recipients. We're going to have injuries throughout the game. And the people running the game saying, hey, so what? We got enough arms. They're not ready. Everybody who comes in the big leagues that is young and throws 98 is not ready. But they eat up 45 to 60 innings and they serve a valuable purpose. So if you don't have any rules against it, that's what you're going to do. And guess what? You could be great in spring training, but if you're out of options, you're not making the club, because they're only looking for pitchers who have options that they can bring up, down, up, down, up, down. That's the state of the game.
Tyler, jump in here.
I do think that's one annoying thing. I believe they did something to help combat that. You can only make so many moves back and forth now. But I used to hate that, and I dreaded that at the beginning of my career. Like, oh, crap, I went 0 for 4 again. I'm going back down. Then I'm coming back up. And you see that with a lot of young guys. And I think to John's point, it's, man, this kid's got a special arm. We really can't trust him to throw 150 innings throughout the year. But if we throw him out there every 2-3 weeks, he can surprise a lineup and run through and give us a good start, once, twice a month.
We cover all the teams in Major League Baseball, of course, but all of us live in the Atlanta area, so we can't pretend that the Braves aren't there playing baseball games. Obviously, the team got off to a very slow start. I'm interested to find out what all three of you guys feel about the Braves in terms of their long-term outlook here in 2025.
Well, it's pretty frustrating to watch because, they too have some glaring, I won't say weaknesses, but some difficulties. They're obviously getting some consistent offense has been, a concern. Obviously, they'll be getting some help with Ronald Acuna Jr. coming back here pretty soon. But the fact of the matter is this is something that's not just, it appeared last year, and you expected the market to correct after 2023 when it seemed like everybody had, monster career years, 307 homers. You figured that the market would correct to a certain extent. I don't think we expected it to correct to the extent that it did last year. Injuries having a big part of that, but it's bled over to this year. Not only that, you take 60 starts out of your starting rotation with Fried and Morton, and you're replacing those 60 innings with some guys that are going to be up and down between AAA, whether it's Smith Shawver. I know Ian Anderson was in the mix in spring training. Elder, guys like that. These guys, that's who you're replacing those 40, 50, 60 starts with. Not to mention the fact that you can't count on Chris Sale going out and having a Triple Crown year again. The market will correct to a certain extent there. Reynaldo Lopez having the year that he had. Barely, we've seen him for 3 innings this year so far. You don't know when he's coming back because he just had shoulder surgery. So it's then on top of that, you have trouble bridging the gap between said starter and Raisel Iglesias in the 9th inning. So there's some issues that need to be addressed. And, until this team offensively gets their stuff together and they get Strider back and maybe a couple tweaks to the bullpen to help bridge that gap, they say you can't win the division in April, but you can sure as heck lose it. And, our worst nightmare has happened here in April.
So what has to happen for the Braves in order for them to turn this around? And I'm trying to think of the questions that the fans would love to know from you, you two guys. What do the Braves have to do to turn this around in a different direction and have a chance to maybe fight their way into the postseason after the rough start?
Well, they've made some decisions that are their identity, and those decisions were locking up a lot of young, good ball players, and their identity was going to be built around their offense. Ronald Acuna is a difference maker. He's a game changer, but he's on his 2nd knee surgery now. This is what people don't understand. When you sign long-term contracts, you're hoping that the track record keeps going in the right direction. And they were never built to just dominate from the arm side of the mound. They were built, when you think about what made them so special, they basically beat the tar out of people and had a historic year, like Chipper said. There's too many strikeouts in their lineup. And when that happens, they're going to be exposed. And when you're exposed, when you leave spring training, you need other areas of your ball club to hide that so it doesn't get exposed. Their bullpen is not one of those areas right now. Can it be? I'm not sure. They got some live arms. Their starting rotation should be a strength, but not to the degree where you can win a lot of 2-1, 1-0, 3-2 baseball games while your offense is struggling. They just, in my opinion, when they get back to their identity and they make pitchers pay for their mistakes, you're going to see the Braves rolling. But you can't have bases loaded, nobody out, and not score. You can't have a man on third, nobody out, and not score. Those are things that when you're flying high and hit a ton of home runs, maybe nobody notices. But these are the things that stand out. And so now you become more of a mortal team instead of immortal when you think about their lineup on paper and you go around the league and you go New York's lineup, Philly's lineup, whose lineup would you like to have? Well, that becomes an interesting discussion. So every team leaves spring training knowing what their warts are. The goal is to never expose it. Don't let somebody get in there and expose a weakness, because then it's just going to be a problem all year. And right now, for me, if they get back to making more contact, they're going to be fine.
That kind of goes to something that Chipper was talking about. Basically, the lack of situational hitting, the situational awareness doesn't even seem to be there. You watch these guys up there at the plate, and it doesn't look like they're even trying to put the ball in play. They're just trying to hit the ball into the stands for a home run. It seems like an all or nothing approach, at least from my vantage point. And it's not just the Braves. I mean, that's happening all across baseball.
But Jim, that's the reward system. Until management changes their reward system, these players do not get dinged for striking out with a man on third. You know when they get dinged? Hitting a ground ball. They don't even want them to hit a ground ball. And so that's why I'm saying over 162, they may have an argument with 41 home runs and 200 strikeouts. Try to do that in the postseason against the league pitching. Try to keep hitting home runs and strike out and see how it does. Nobody has ever won a championship with that formula. And that's the difference. And so analytically in 162, it kind of gives everybody a chance, no matter how much salary you have or whatever your payroll is. But there's a major separator when you get to the end of the year and facing a lead pitcher. That's when it just doesn't even compute.
Flo, what are your thoughts on this conversation?
I mean, it's dead on. I mean, when you get to the postseason, you're facing number 1, number 2, number 3, 1A reliever, 1B reliever, closer coming in. Like, those are the ones where you almost have to take a 2-strike approach right out of the gate. Because if they're executing and hitting spots, like, you even got one chance to slightly barrel up something. And if you have a good situation for your team, like you can't miss that pitch, lead off double or something, and you're up there, nobody out. Like you got to be 2-strike approach right out of the chute. And I do think players and teams do a better job of that in the postseason because there's that emphasis and there's that additional pressure that you're facing a number one, you're facing their best reliever in this situation, and you're not going to get many mistakes, if any, and you got to be able to do something to help your team push a run across. But to John's point, when you're facing number 4, number 5, you got somebody coming up and down from AAA, throwing the 6th and 7th inning after a bad start. Like, yeah, you do damage. And you get rewarded for that damage, to John's point as well. Like, now if you had a shortstop go out there and hit 225 with 40 homers and play decent defensive run saved, he's making $15 million. Why would you not shoot for that from a player's perspective?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you guys, I'm sure you all would like to get back in the game and get a full-time job and get the salaries that are being doled out now for guys that, they maybe have gotten off to good starts in their careers. But I mean, you're talking the money is just insane as well as the length of these contracts. I mean, what are the odds that all these contracts, they're going to look back on them later on and say, boy, that was a good idea. Boy, that was a good idea. I'm thinking there's going to be a lot of mistakes in the end.
Pretty close to zero, I would say. There's no way physically you can keep it up for that period of time. And I don't know, John would know better. He's been through it a lot more than I have, but like to keep 75% of your production for 15 years, like that's pretty far-fetched unless your last name's Brian.
Yeah, the one thing I don't really understand, I'd love to be in those back rooms when they're doling out these contracts because they base it on the track record of what they're going to do after 1 year. There's no information that you can tell about a player unless you know the under the hood, the heartbeat, and the mindset that is going to guarantee the next 8 years is going to be solid. What I like seeing a player struggle and then have success. Like Riley, he's had both. He's come into the league on fire. He's struggled mightily. He's going to go through his ups and downs, but you've seen both of it. When you give a mega contract to only a good start to a career, you haven't seen the other side of it. And so that's, again, it goes to my point. It's good to be a player today. It's good to have a first fast start because you're going to get basically a copycat type contract. And they just view that if you sign someone to 10 years and you get 6 or 7 years out of that contract, it's viewed as a great contract. Again, reward system. And that's what the players are getting.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I keep thinking as I'm reading these articles on the latest contract that comes out that there must be like at the bottom it's going to be, oh, this is April Fool's Day, by the way. This isn't really happening, but it is happening. And yeah, I'm sure you guys would love to, be sitting in that back room and having somebody write a check like that for you guys. Not that you didn't make good money in your careers and all that, but it's just like really mind blowing in my humble opinion.
Well, again, I would have never got paid as a starter if I didn't make 35 starts. That was our reward system. You can't have a bad year and throw 240 innings. It's impossible. Challenge anybody to throw 240 innings and have a bad year. So that was our reward system. Today, I would be only pitching in the games that I feel great because I would have to max effort and I'm going to have a shorter career. So I have to maximize my contract for that short window because there's no sustainability to any of it. There's not one star pitcher that has survived Tommy John. Not one. And so when you have those hanging over your head, instead of thinking how great Paul Skeens is, which he is, it's when is he going to get Tommy John? So what are the Pirates going to do and how are they going to maximize his greatness before he has a Tommy John? And will he end up like most of the Pirates somewhere else? And because they can't sign him and won't sign him. So that's, again, the game that we have today. And people are fine with it because they think, well, people come back from Tommy Johns, but you're missing 18 months. And if you have your second one, you're not guaranteed to be just as good as you were before when you had your first one. So it's good to be a pitcher to throw 50, to throw 130 innings and get a mega deal is good for the pitcher. And we've got a couple of those who have been able to do that.
Yeah, suffice to say, at the very least, it's very good for the pitcher. That's for sure. What are you guys' thoughts on baseball in general in terms of, we talked about the situational hitting and how that changes things for the pitcher as well. What about the management class in Major League Baseball? Do you feel like they're seeing the game the way you're seeing the game at this point, John?
Well, there's two classes that have emerged. The one that aligns themselves with the management and doesn't deviate, he's not going to get fired. He's a conduit to the information. He's bought in. That's why he's got the job. Then you're seeing that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a great manager. You're seeing the older manager come back into the game and use a blender, use the information and the gut. Bruce Bochy, Brian Snitker. There's a bunch of them that have come into the game. Terry Francona, we thought was on his way out. Not so fast. Again, everybody thought that anybody could manage. If you're given the answers to the test, that you can make all the decisions based on the information. The game is not played that way. When people tell you, and I guarantee you the people that are telling you this have never played the game, that the scoreboard does not matter when it comes to making decisions, have never played the game of baseball. You tell that to the New York Yankees when they had Mariano Rivera in the 6th inning, if the scoreboard didn't matter in the other team making decisions and trying to catch up before he comes in the game. So all of those things, I think for managerial styles, we've seen the blend come back in, and you've got to manage people. You can't just manage statistics and numbers. You have to manage people. And we're seeing that blend play out favorably for a little bit of the older managers hanging around.
Tyler, I know you spent a lot of time with young boys, helping them get their baseball careers started. I don't know how you handle pitchers or how, I've heard horror stories from parents who'd want their kid to stay in the game no matter what. If their arm falls off, so be it. They just want to be able to tell everybody at the water cooler the next day that my kid went 6 innings and he was throwing 83 miles an hour. How do you handle kids at the ages that you're dealing with right now, Tyler?
Yeah, it's a little more challenging than you'd think. So like I started a travel team for different reasons for my oldest boy, 10-year-old, and I'll pick John's brain a little bit here on what he thinks is the best approach. I try to keep the pitch count as low as I can, and I try to use all my players. Everyone pitches on my team because I don't want any one pitcher going out there throwing 75 on Saturday. We get the championship on Sunday. We need them to throw another 100. Like, no, we're going to divvy this up and we're going to win as a team and lose as a team. But I don't necessarily just go by the pitch count, read the stress of the innings, read their body emotions, body language. Are they getting frustrated out there? Do you see any mechanical changes, differences and such? And then really just kind of communicate with the kid. And obviously at this age, I got to communicate with the parents as well. Like, hey, he's at 40 pitches. I don't really want him to go another one. What do you think? And just have that open dialogue. But I'd love to hear like John's thoughts on this, because obviously he's spent a lot of time and research looking into these kind of things.
Yeah, I think pitch counts should be just taken with a grain of salt, because they don't take into effect of whether the young man has good mechanics or not. There's pitching in a lot of stress. Look, the only problem I have with max effort, besides max effort, that's another thing. You could throw pitch count right out the window when you max effort and everything. I just don't like when every kid is throwing a competitive pitch, meaning there's no time to exercise the arm without every pitch being a competitive, stressful pitch. And we're using them younger and younger into tournaments all over the place, and we're putting a lot of importance way too early on their development of dominating. But it's not about developing, it's about dominating. They all want to dominate, and they all want to get drafted, and they all want social media hits, so they're going to try to throw the ball as hard as they can. A pitch count about 40 years ago was put in play to show a pitcher to be economical and how to get guys out. It was never a gauge or a barometer as if your arm was going to break. Because go back to my earlier point, if you got bad mechanics, you can lower that pitch count by 20, whatever that magic number is. But if you threw a baseball with no stress and a fastball, and you didn't care about the results, you could throw 100 pitches with no problem. No problem. But what happens is we're creatures of trying to get guys out. We're going to throw nasty pitches all the time. And if we have a lot of runners on base, that stress and that devalues that pitch count. So I like pitchers off the mound all the time throwing. but not necessarily throwing a competitive pitch. So if you've got a young boy that pitches on Monday, there's nothing wrong with Wednesday and Thursday, or Wednesday getting off the mound and having a nice bullpen, exercising the arm so that when he pitches again, he's more familiar with his mechanics. I'm a big believer, get off the mound instead of flat ground. I think you learn more about the stresses of your body and your mechanics than if you just necessarily exercise your arm from flat ground. So I'm a big believer in that.
Do you take pitches away from young kids? Like, I don't want them throwing sliders yet. I don't want them doing, cutters. I mean, what is your philosophy on what kind of pitches they're throwing at such early ages?
Yeah, again, nobody's going to pay attention to this because nobody pays attention to the injuries. This is an epidemic. We're not dealing with young arms that are hanging in there. We're dealing with young arms that are trying to be big leaguers at 10, 12, 13, 14 years old. I would tell, and no one's going to listen to me. I've had Mark DeRosa ask me questions about, a stud left-hander that's touching 90. What would you do? I'd say I'd tell his parents at 13, you're going to play another position because you're not going to forget how to pitch, because at 13, at 90 doesn't make sense to me. Like, why pitch that young man every 5 days when the reality is that's only going to lead towards more. He wants to dominate. He wants clicks. So taking pitches away, I absolutely would, but no one's going to do that because they want to dominate. A curveball is not that bad as much as a slider. The doctors will tell you when you hit puberty, maybe you can start throwing a slider, but it's not for everybody. The curveball, if thrown incorrectly, is not great. But again, if we're going to max effort everything, a lot of pitches are bad because we're seeing that breakdown in the big leagues. It's no longer the opportunity to fine point your command and throw the ball under a barrel or above a barrel. It's throw it in the strike zone with so much max effort spin that we don't care where the ball goes. That's the game we have today. That's why so many guys are breaking down.
Well, just so you know, John, Tyler and I, we always listen to you. We always are here to listen. So
it's amazing, though. It's amazing because literally the entities that are out there are teaching opposite of what I'm teaching or what I'm saying, because they're in the business of, can you get me 5 to 10 more miles per hour on my fastball? That's what every young man is trying to get when they get into high school and get into college. If you're not 90, think about this. If you're not 90 miles an hour going into high school, your chances of going to college are really, on a scholarship, slim. That's sad because we're missing out on great pitchers. And so we're just creating factories of arms that, again, at some point, big leagues teams are going to zig when everyone's zagging. At some point. It hasn't happened yet. And here's the problem. When you have a healthy staff where nobody throws over 97, analytics is going to tell you, see those 4-something ERAs? Don't pay attention to the 32 starts they made. Pay attention to the damage they're giving up. So that's, again, when you're trying to look for, the Striders of the world who are fantastic, phenomenal. Every team wants 5 of them. And that's a tough gig to have those guys last doing what they're doing.
Well, I'll tell you this, John. I only let a handful of my boys throw fastballs and changeups, and every team we face, every other weekend when we play, they have 3 or 4 pitchers that are throwing multiple types of breaking balls. We're 10 years old. I'm like, this kid will be done in a couple of years. Like, there's no way. He's throwing 65 at 10 years old, snapping off 48-mile-an-hour sliders. Our kids are looking foolish up there, but I'm like, you just hang in here. It's a grind, boys. We don't need to win today. We'll try our best. We're going to win in the long run, and we're going to have fun doing it and continue to develop and play baseball as long as we can.
They want to flip the switch on you, John Smoltz. I want to find out how your golf game is these days.
Well, I'm training again and trying to get my really, really broke shoulders strong. I'm getting stronger. I'm hitting the ball farther, but I got to get my game tightened up in the next 3 weeks. I got a U.S. Open qualifier and then some tournaments later on, but it's really come down to my putting. My putting has been just awful. So I feel like I'm trending in the right direction, even though I'm getting older. The new hips have been fantastic. I hate throwing anything. I had to throw out the first pitch at Richmond, which was a totally cool experience for me. And the ball feels like a balloon. It could go anywhere. But as far as everything below the shoulders and swinging, I can swing a club now with no pain. And I'm playing a lot of golf, trying to get one more run competitively to see where I can take it.
What was y'all's reaction to Rory finally getting that green jacket? That was pretty special weekend. Masters was something else this time.
It was, and the tension and pressure that was on him is probably he's got to be 50 to 70 pounds lighter. He's got to feel like the world has just jumped off his shoulders and he can relax, and maybe some of the greatest golf he can play is ahead of him. He's a great golfer. I hate it when sports is all about what you haven't done.
Right.
When, we were a byproduct of that as the Atlanta Braves of what we hadn't done instead of what incredible run we were on. And that's the same thing in sports. People expect so many things to happen for greatness that sometimes it's hard. It's hard. And he was battling it, man. I'm telling you, if you put a blood pressure cuff on anybody who was rooting hard for Rory McIlroy, you would have had 5 calls to the hospital in that final round, because that's how much up and down and blood pressure was going when the game went the way it went.
It was an amazing tournament. It really was. I don't watch a ton of golf. I spend more time watching baseball and football, but I really enjoyed the Masters. There was a lot of drama there, and I felt like the good guy in the end came out with his win. And I agree with you. I'm sure he's living on a cloud here for the next however many weeks to really enjoy what he earned.
Yeah, and I'll say another thing. And again, I know not a lot of people share this, or maybe a lot of them don't share this feeling that I have about what's the separation in golf right now. But the fact that he has stayed on the PGA Tour and the fact that he got this is, I root hard for those guys. And that's just a personal thing for me. Everybody has a choice. They can do whatever they want. And a lot of those guys chose a lot of money on the other tour, but Rory stayed, and you could tell by the crowd, you could tell by everybody rooting for him how that meant and what it felt like.
John, if you were back in your playing days and you couldn't pitch one day and the Braves had to have a win, you think back to some of your teammates, bullpen guys, starting pitchers, who would you tap? I mean, you've got great Hall of Fame names to choose from. Maybe you go off, maybe you tell us, which of the big boys you would pick, and then what's a sleeper that we wouldn't think about?
Well, I'm telling you right now, you can't go wrong with Glavine or Maddox, right? I mean, depending on the lineup, I don't even think it matters, but let's just say I picked them 1 and 2. The sleeper for me, and one of the greatest careers that got thwarted, that got cut short, was Steve Avery. I don't think people remember how dominant he was at a young age. Pitched 2 of the greatest postseason games in one series against the Pirates. I believe they were 2 1-0 games. To me, he was Clayton Kershaw before Clayton Kershaw was even entered the big league. So I would have loved to seen Steve Avery stay healthy. He fought some tough moments in his career with baby that was born, his son, and all kinds of complications. And so to me, I don't think there was anybody I watched that was as bulldogish, brash, confident, cocky, and he had it all. And then he hurt his shoulder. He tried to pitch through it, and it was frustrating to watch. I know it was probably frustrating for him because he had a brilliant career ahead of him. So that would be my guy. That would be what people might forget, how unbelievable he was. You understand, in Game 6 on the road, I don't even get a chance to pitch Game 7 if he doesn't pitch that masterpiece 0-0 going into the 9th. That is, to me, like equivalent to the Game 7 against Morris when we don't have any room for error. He can't give up a run. And he did it on the road and gave me a chance to pitch that Game 7, which turned into us going to the World Series.
I remember where I was actually when Steve Avery got the call to the big leagues. I was driving from Columbia, South Carolina to Charlotte, North Carolina to work a AA game. And when I was nearing the Charlotte Stadium, on the radio, they announced that Steve Avery had been taken up to the major leagues. And I had been following him as a minor leaguer, all the way through his career. So I was really excited. And obviously very disappointed, unfortunately, for all the reasons you just gave, where he had a lot of bad luck once he got to the major leagues, and it really impacted his career. But boy, he was unbelievable.
He sure was. And he was funny. And, we had a blast together. And you think about all our pitchers and everybody that came through that organization and the run that we were on. And yeah, again, we only won one championship, but we set up a standard that will be hard to ever live up to for that kind of period of time. And when we talk about earlier about the edge, that was our edge. That was our, what we were known for is we were going to outpitch you. We were going to be in every game. If we scored enough runs, we were going to win championships. If we didn't, we were going to have some frustrations, and we did. But that's the beauty of sports. It's hard to be complete in every area. And the one thing I know about this game today is they have figured out a different way to win. They don't believe in starting pitchers. At least they didn't 10 years ago. They believe that was a commodity they couldn't afford. So they cut out the value of a starting pitcher and put more emphasis in the bullpen. Well, by doing that, now you have a commodity that doesn't have a lot of supply and demand. So you're driving up the salaries through the roof for an elite pitcher, and there's just not enough of them. So that's kind of, again, how the game has shifted, because on paper, that sounds great. If I could use, it's like an all-star game. The all-star game goes 2 hours and 20 minutes. You know why? Because everyone pitches one inning, and the guys that come in to pitch one inning are pretty nasty, and it's quick. And they kind of like that idea. So they took that idea and put it on, no pun intended, steroids, and said, we're going to just create that. And we're going to have 5 guys, 6 guys in the pen that can only pitch one inning, no flexibility. And we're just going to dominate that way. And when you do it, it looks great. And when you don't, it's tough to sustain.
Well, John, thank you so much for your time. Chipper's obviously rounding up his kids at school right now, but we appreciated him stopping in to spend some time with us as well. And as always, Tyler Flowers, love hearing your insights, and looking forward to hearing about how
this was a great day to just listen and learn from these two guys. So, John, thanks for coming on. Chipper, thanks as well.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm getting into my season now of broadcasting, and there's going to be some interesting storylines to watch this year. I don't know that we're going to have the collective balance throughout the league, but we've got some pretty much super teams. And for the Braves, and what Chipper said before, the Braves have some work to do here in the first 30 days. I wouldn't panic until I get to the 30-day mark. And if it's still running at the same level at 30 days, then it's time to maybe get a little worried. But I still believe they're going to turn it around.
Well, John, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Having you and Chipper on the same podcast is really a dream come true for me and Tyler. I know we both were really excited about this show, and you did not disappoint. Neither did Chipper. So thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure, guys.
Really appreciate your time.
Yep.
Tyler, we'll see you soon, my friend.
Sounds good, Jim. Fun as always.
Okay. And for all you folks who are hopefully enjoyed our podcast today, thanks for coming along. We'll see you again next time on Fans First, a sports podcast. Well, I hope you enjoyed Fans First, a sports podcast. We had a special edition of our program today with 2 Hall of Famers, Chipper Jones and John Smoltz, coming in just to talk baseball with us. I mean, I felt like a kid in a candy store, to be honest with you. I hope you did too. It was a lot of fun. We learned a lot of interesting things, and we hope we can come back with another episode that somehow measures up to 2 Hall of Famers. I guess I got to find 3 next time. But anyway, thanks for joining us for today's episode of Fans First, a sports podcast. Don't forget to follow us on X and Instagram and Facebook. And please check out the Fans First YouTube channel. We would love it if you would subscribe. That would do us a world of good. Don't forget about our Fans First website also. It's fansfirstpodcast.com. To be included as a guest on an episode, send your voice memo or your video file or written memo to Jim, that's me, at fansfirstpodcast.com. Please keep your submissions to no more than 45 seconds in length, but if you go a little long, we want you to be a part of the show. We'll let you get away with it. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to talking to you again very soon right here on Fans First, a sports podcast.
Stay tuned, stay passionate, and keep celebrating the sport you love. Visit us at fansfirstpodcast.com to explore more. Sign up for our newsletter to receive exclusive updates and follow the podcast on social media to join our growing community of sports enthusiasts. Your voice matters to us, so don't hesitate to share your thoughts and connect with fellow fans. See you next time.